Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City Council meeting, a regular City Council meeting of Tuesday, October 1st, 2019. We'll defer to the mayor here for an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Lord, thank you for a wonderful and glorious day. We appreciate all that you've given us, all that you've provided for. We ask that you watch over our city council tonight and they make true and right decisions. We ask that you watch over our citizens, our staff, and our first responders that protect our city on a daily basis. We also hope you can watch over our federal government, that they get their act together and help move this country forward. We do all we do in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We always appreciate your thoughts and your leadership. Thank you. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Shoup,
Here.
Carlisle,
Here.
Ivy,
Here.
Lawrence,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
Detman.
Here. If there's any business from the audience that is not published on tonight's agenda, will you please come forward and see Clerk Haley. She'll give you a little slip of paper and we'll get you up a little bit later in tonight's program. I don't see anything under the mayor's report here.
Not much, just went to the Project 65 event that was downtown. Got a good attendance down there, so
Great.
good cause, and had a lot of people show support for the veterans.
And once again, thank you for representing all of us down there all the time. Council members' concerns, comments, liaison report. We'll start down at Charlie, and welcome back from your nice trip to our 50th state.
Well, thank you. Glad to be back, and glad the weather's a little bit better here than when I left.
Yes, sir. Stuart?
No, sir.
Liaison, code enforcement meeting, they were always interesting. Code enforcement meeting.
Code enforcement is very interesting.
That was it, so I did my liaison duties.
Great. We have a consent agenda this evening. Folks, if you picked a copy up, it's from alphabet number A through I. If there's any comments or questions about that, I'd be glad to entertain them now. Otherwise, I would look for a motion.
Make a motion to
Laura?
accept the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Kathy, on the consent agenda, please call the roll.
Carlisle,
Here.
Ivy,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. I see no old business under item number 9 and under 10A, a proposed Burning Little distribution facility, Mr. Ben Dunn and Megan DiGiacomo. If you please come forward.
Good evening, council members. Benjamin Dunn for Highlands County Development Services Director, but more here on behalf of Economic Development's one agency underneath my department. So I'm here more acting under an economic development umbrella today. I also have Megan DiGiacomo back of me. She's actually the executive manager of economic development, and we also have a few planning staff members, Jody Thayer and Melanie Culpepper as well. Wanted to come here today. And we know there's been some discussion and talks about a proposed opportunity that's come across for this community. And it was already on the agenda, is the Bernie Little facility. As we know, they currently have an existing facility today. They're looking to relocate. Their business is going well, which is a good thing. And because of that, they are needing to move to a bigger facility to accommodate and maintain what they're currently doing in business and for future expansion and growth, which is a key component of economic development and what economic development department has really been tasked to do countywide ever since it came under the county it used to be a private under the EDC. EDC still exists, but the actual activities of economic development are under the county now. Scott, if you can go to the first slide. Just a quick breakdown of what is the mission. Well, it's to enhance the quality of life in Highlands County by attracting a diversity of new business and in creating or increasing industrial investment while facilitating the retention and successful expansion of existing business and industry. And we highlighted that or underlined that because we wanted you to keep that in your mind as we move forward in this presentation on when we get into the discussion about the facility itself. Scott, next slide. Highlands County has identified some target industries, and there's 6 of them. We have agriculture, which we know we have a huge agricultural presence in this county. Manufacturing and processing, we have industries in here as well. I'll give you a good example of one that just started up over in Avon Park is Sunpure Road. It's a recycling company. They took the old Sunpure building, or their old cargo juice factory, and they've been rehabbing it, and they're actually operating some of their business today out of there. But once they get water and sewer out there, they will go to try to operate fully, at a full level, which will create, jobs and, revenue into this county and industry, because that is actually their U.S. headquarters. So we do have that in this county, manufacturing, processing, obviously healthcare and life science. We have a huge medical presence here in Highlands County. Tourism and aviation, we have the Avon Park Airport, but then obviously our Sebring Regional Airport, which has a lot of industry in there. Then logistics and distribution, that's a key one. That is one that we feel Highlands County is really set up for long-term and mid-term to have. We feel with the 27 being an artery that goes through this county, which is 27 a strategic intermodal system facility. Its main purpose is to move freight in this state of Florida. Then you have 70, you have 66, 98. These roads tie you to the east and west in this county and to other jurisdictions and get you to the coast. So we really think this county is primed to have future logistics and distribution facility that will utilize those roadways to get to where they need to be. And logistics and distribution is also a target industry of the state of Florida as well. Next slide, Scott. So why am I here? Well, we had a planning zoning case, this case came to the planning zoning board. There was a lot of discussion from the public about the city's position. So we asked the city after the fact, what is the position? And Scott and Bob said, well, maybe you should come and talk to the council about this. And which we felt was fair because the comments that were being made really weren't from anybody acting on this council or in city management. So we wanted to come here, present some facts to everyone, some information, and answer any questions you may have. This isn't really a decision-making item because it's land into the county, but this is our way of being transparent and coming to the city and asking and soliciting any comments you may have.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment?
No problem.
I just want to make sure our audience and our folks at home understand that, number one, this proposed zoning change that went before the county planning and zoning board is not in the city limits.
Correct.
So we won't be taking any votes or anything like that this evening. And also that the planning and zoning board did recommend on, I believe it was a 5-1
Correct.
vote not to grant that to the county commissioners, and that also this has not gone before the county commissioners, which makes it a little awkward for us, but okay.
It's going October 15th to our board.
October 15th, so it's not in the city, the P&Z board turned it down, and it still has to go before the county commission. I want everybody to be very clear on that.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Scott, next slide, please. This is just an area of the overall general area with the site highlighted in yellow there. This is really trying to give everyone a visual perspective on what's out there and what's surrounding this property. As you can see, a lot of it's vacant land. As we get into the next slide, we'll show what some of the zoning districts are around there, which we have up there now. And as you can see here, the zoning districts vary. You have city zoning of R3 in the general area on the east side of Ben Eastman Road. The city actually has C1 zoning that actually extends along Ben Eastman Road, but also goes north on the part that's under construction, say the Sebring Parkway. Then the site that we're looking at is hatched out in the R3, but in yellow. But let me also make sure everyone understands the B3 on the south of that site will also be part of this. Is also part of this project if it was to move forward. So what they're really looking to do is extending that B3 to the north, and then as you can see, you also have B3 to the east of that property. Then you have under the county land, you have agricultural to the north of this property, with zone ag, which I'm assuming at some point would change because everything else around it has, which is encompassed into the city. So this is just trying to give everyone a good illustration of what the zoning districts look like. And if you really look at the C1 in the city over here, whether you're taking the terminus that's right there on Ben Eastman Road, if you run it parallel or run it horizontal to Scenic Highway, it encompasses about 3/4 of the proposed request. Or if you look at the northern boundary and you run it, parallel over to Scenic Highway, then it's obviously north of that. So, but just to give a visual representation of that. Scott, next slide, please. We had some questions. Well, what's this thing going to look like? What are they going to build? Here's some examples. By no means is this what it's going to be, but these were some illustration examples that were presented at the P&Z and that were given to us as example facilities in other locations. And as you can see, they're nice. They are constructed in a manner in which it doesn't look like just like a warehouse facility, because this use is also going to be proposed to have an event center as well. They would like to have some type of event center that is part of this whole overall project that can have weddings, that could have meetings. So it'll be use or multifaceted in what they would like to do, long-term on this property. Scott, next slide is just a couple other illustrations of the potential look of a building. And why we're providing this, and I think because we know it's important to the community. No one wants to see an eyesore if you're driving on the road. And I think which makes even more sense of why they would like to push the building envelope to the north part of the property of the existing B3, because I think in the long-term future you may want to see offices along the existing B3 when you do have a use like this. So there is some type of functionality from different type of uses. But we knew it was kind of important because I know I talked to Scott, what is this going to look like? Well, here's some examples of what it could look like. Next slide, please. Just a little background info that we pulled together. The Bernie Little family association with Anheuser-Busch began in 1963. Bernie Little Distributors was formed in 1972 in Lakeland, so 5 years before I was born, so they've been around a while. Yeah. In 1985, they opened up their new facility here in Sebring. It was a state-of-the-art distribution facility. It's off the airport road, or out there by the airport location. And they've been here over 30 years. They've been long-term community partner. They've invested into the community. They supply jobs. Actually right here, it's actually, I think, a little over 35 local jobs into the community. You have indirect and direct as well. So they've been a presence here. And I think this last bullet is really key too. In 2012, they were selected by Anheuser-Busch as the #1 wholesale distributor out of 700 distributors nationwide. So they're a player in the game, and they have a huge presence in this industry, which generates an economic impact to Highlands County. This is something I pulled off the internet, and this is something we'll present actually at our board on October 15th, just to give an understanding of the global impact of this industry. The beer industry in the United States directly employs over 135,000 people. The indirect jobs associated exceed over 338,000. The beer distributors contribute a total of $70 billion economic impact across the United States. And the beer distributor activities contribute $13 billion to federal, state, and local tax base, and that's not including an additional $11 billion in the federal, state, and local the local alcohol excess and consumption taxes. And they're also responsible for $23 billion in transportation efficiencies for the beer industry each year, and they also contribute $178 million in economic impacts to communities through support of charities, local events, and economic development. And the source of those information is listed down there as well. So as you can see from our economic development standpoint, this industry is huge, and you have a local business owner who is heavily into this industry with a huge economic impact from a positive standpoint. If this was to go forward, there would be a $9 million capital investment into that site. Property tax revenue, at their current site, they're paying around $22,300. If this future site was to go forward, based on some estimates from the property appraiser, you're ranging over tax revenue between $44,500 to $66,800. That's an estimate. And that's not including if that current facility goes vacant, which they own, you can probably bet they're going to try to probably occupy that with another industry. So you could, you're going to have more jobs there and jobs at this facility as well. As I said earlier, they generate indirect jobs into the local community and direct jobs. They inject the money back into the local economy, and honestly, they're a local industry supplying a regional demand, nationwide. Next slide, Scott. You got it. All right, from an economic development standpoint for my department, sitting down with Jeff and Megan, and talking about this, it's a target industry for Highlands County. One of their tasks is to not just look for new business, but to expand and retain our existing businesses. And this is one which falls right into that category, and it's an identified target industry here. Which obviously it's consistent with our business retention and expansion initiatives. It's located in an area that, and this is a key component too. There was numerous sites that was, and Megan could attest to this, they went all different sites. It's not like they just picked this one, so this is where we want to be and this is it. They went to different sites. They need sites that have infrastructure, whether it's a roadway, close proximity to 27, or water, sewer. That's here. Other areas, it doesn't exist, and the investment hasn't been made to get it out there, so how can we expect a business to locate farther out if we don't have the necessary infrastructure in place to support it? And that's something that we're struggling countywide here in economic development, because other key locations we're looking at, we don't have certain utilities, and obviously to expand costs money, so where's the money coming from? So we have to try to fix that problem down the road if we want other industry to come here in Highlands County. The project has a positive impact to the local tax base. This project is necessary. Honestly, it's truly necessary to support and retain and expand this operation of this current business. As I said earlier, they're not just wanting to relocate. They have to. They have run their course in their current facility. They need a bigger place to do their operations. The project will retain the jobs in this local community, and as I said earlier, the other location, if vacated, could potentially have another local business supporting jobs. From a planning zoning perspective, and this is all stuff that was touched upon at the planning zoning meeting, so we're just basically referencing facts and information that was already put out there. As I already talked about, it's by near existing infrastructure. Let's see here. It's by 27 was part of the SIS facility, functioning running north-south through the county. Their setbacks or buffering can occur to help transition this type of use. There's a lot of discussion about compatibility and uses. And there's a lot of opinion about that. I can probably provide examples throughout the state where you have existing residential, where you have distribution facilities, and you have a buffer, you have separation, you have landscaping or a wall that helps minimize that potential visual impact. And 10 years later, as certain things mature from a landscaping standpoint, you don't even notice it. And it just becomes part of it. The southern half of that property is already currently zone B3, which already allows this use, already permits this use today. So that use could go on the front B3 property, but it just doesn't make sense for them to be on that property, that front portion. And it's consistent with comprehensive plan policies. When my staff took a look at it, they looked at the comprehensive plan and the policies, and they felt that it was consistent with it. There's economic objectives and infrastructure objectives in the comprehensive plan, and this fits the bill, on all of those as well. So from our staff opinion, an economic development opinion, we support the project, and we're here to provide this information to you and answer any questions you may have, as we move forward.
Well, Ben, just to go back a couple of pages onto the local economic impact, property tax revenue generation, it would appear that the current tax of 22 could easily double to 44 or more. Is that county tax or a combination of county and city, or just city? What is the 44.5 to 66.8?
And let me first, and I'm gonna,
represent?
Megan, I know Megan talked to the property appraiser, may let her speak, but also let me indicate why the increase as well, Your current facility is around 42,000 square facility. The new building would be
No,
70,000.
That's not what I'm.
No, I know, I'm
asking.
just making
No,
that point to this
I just wanna
council.
know, are those figures county and city tax combined,
total.
like our taxpayers pay? Or is it just county tax?
It's just county tax because it's currently in unincorporated Highlands County.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure
Yeah,
here?
I have a question as to how many trucks we're talking about here at the present time and how many they anticipate will be coming in and out on a daily basis.
On the high end, they are estimating a total of 8 to 10 a day.
Okay.
So
Throughout the day.
Yeah.
throughout the day, not all at one time.
Right, so let me understand this just a little bit better. They're gonna basically bring beer in semi-trucks and then redistribute it in smaller trucks to go out to the
Correct.
different
Yes.
7-Elevens or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
So it honestly would have less traffic than you would see at a Publix that backs up to residential, where you have the trucks coming in to do the deliveries, but then also the constant flow of customers that are coming in and out. So it's gonna be a lower traffic density than you would see in anything that would typically be commercial.
And then one other question, is there, say, a radius of where those trucks are gonna go? I mean, is that just for Highlands County, or is it the counties around Highlands County that they distribute this at?
They have a contract to distribute through a certain radius, so they cover a number of counties, but they have that worked out with Anheuser-Busch. They have to have special regions in which they can deliver.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, Mr. Giacomo, I'm not sure I understood your response to that. Is that the number of trucks or the number of trips?
It's the number of trucks,
Okay.
which totals also the number of trips.
One truck is typically two.
Yeah.
One
Is
truck
that,
would be
is
two
that the
trips.
semis?
So
Just the
that's,
semis, it doesn't include the delivery?
no, that includes the deliveries coming in, but then they'll have their smaller vans in which they distribute out.
But that's more trips than just the 8 to 10.
Sure it is, because they have to take the product
Well,
out
yeah,
and
I
then
was
they
just
have to
gonna-
return.
Okay.
So it's at least double the number of trucks, if not more.
They have not told us a number larger than 16 at this point.
Okay. I
And
just-
then, of course, they'll do any sort of
Well,
traffic
it just seemed kind of
concurrency.
small when you said
Yeah.
8 to 10, and it's like, no, you gotta turn around and come back.
Yes, it's total, but it's not an astronomical number where we've seen some projects where they're gonna have hundreds of trucks a
Sure.
day.
Mr. Stewart?
Is this gonna be in the middle of the night as well?
No.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They start a little bit earlier in the morning. I think they maybe set around 5 or 6, but then they're done in the evening. They're not a 24-hour facility.
And they're conscious of the fact that they're in the community. They're not gonna be, running semis in the middle of the night, waking people up. So-
Well, actually, actually, I don't think that's accurate. I was at that planning and zoning meeting when they turned that down.
Mhm.
And the whole idea was that they did have the semis coming in with the product in the middle of the night, but then they certainly wouldn't be starting to load up the product until morning and then making their trips from
Okay.
there. But the big trucks come in at night, the delivery trucks, which are some of the larger trucks, just like we see around town, they work during the day.
Okay. I didn't hear that specifically in that meeting, but they can surely clarify in more detail
Sure.
at the
We have
county
other
commission
members of the
meeting.
public that were at that meeting, so they might be able to help
They
us out on
possibly
that,
could.
too. We
I
just wanna
would-
make sure everybody understands everything here.
Absolutely. I would compare it slightly to, I like personal anecdotes, and so when you think of commercial and other things that have distribution come in and high traffic and whatnot that backs up to residential areas, and even this does not necessarily, there's nothing immediately adjacent residential. I live off of Thunderbird and I'm one street behind Home Depot. So, I can't hear the trucks and they're coming all times a day. There's a lot of traffic. There are plenty of people. Those are wonderful homes. The home values are still great back there. There are things like that where, and then there's buffering. But it's nothing that is of a disturbance to me or my neighbors as far as I'm aware, and this doesn't even have any residential built up next to it.
And I'll give you an example. When I was younger, I used to be a stockman at Publix. We used to unload the trucks at night. And they would come in, so, yeah, you're gonna have truck traffic you're gonna unload, yes. But is it to a great magnitude like the Amazon facility? No. The answer is no. So you'd probably have less impact than you would, like Megan was saying, at Home Depot or a Publix.
I'll bet they
But
sell
the
more
direct
beer
numbers
than
are the
Amazon.
answer.
I
What'd you
bet-
say?
I said, I think they'll probably sell more beer than Amazon.
Yeah, probably, yes.
I bet they do.
There's no online sales of beer.
Have they done a study, like during fruit picking season, there's a ton of semis that run up and down that road. Have they done a study on that? Because during the picking season, you know, there's a lot of semis that run up and down that road, which I'm just trying to bring out the point that traffic's there.
Correct.
The traffic's there.
If this was to go through, they have to go through the county site development process, and part of that's transportation concurrency, and that will be evaluated. If it's deemed a traffic study needs to occur, to look at the intersection, the movements, and the flow of traffic on the roadways, that's all done as part of that. And our county engineering department would handle that.
Mr. Ivy?
Okay, I didn't know.
Did you have something else, Mr.
I'll-
Stewart?
When he's done.
Okay. Sorry to jump you there.
No problem.
Yeah. The, do we have the reasoning behind the planning and zoning not approving that from the county? I mean, did they give reasons or it just?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was there at the meeting. Staff has re-listened to it just as recently as 30, 40 minutes ago, and I have not come to a conclusion why it was denied. But it was denied, 5-1, absolutely. There was a motion to support it. That died with no second, so it died. Then there was a motion to deny it, and then that followed with a 5-1 vote to deny. But I'm still not clear on the reasoning why. I'm just being honest with everyone.
Well, the question on the truck traffic has been answered, one of them that I had. But I do make a statement about just going through the budget process here at the city, cutting positions. We gave a booming raise of 1% to our employees. We've been using savings to balance the budget. Economic development, we've talked about annexation of some way of bringing in revenue to the city so that we can keep our ad valorem taxes lower instead of having to raise those to fund things that are going on here at the city. Things such as, our equipment and our supplies, keeping people instead of going somewhere else, keeping talented people. And it's been a struggle from what I've seen in this the first budget series. Even our comprehensive annual financial plan shows a downward trend for us in revenue. And it's going to reach a critical stage where this time we held the ad valorem at the same rate. We couldn't go back to the rollback rate, but we did keep that at the same level. Somewhere, something's got to give. We've got to grow. We've got to support economic development. You've got a corridor there that's R3. Most of that corridor, you're going to have something there at some point, which will come to you, and they may be us. And where's the city fall in this? Water and sewer we offer there. We also have a little tag that goes along with it saying that you'll agree to annexation if we give you the water and sewer.
Right.
I don't want to be called into any hearings or anything, but we will twist their arms about water and sewer. If you want it, you're going to have agree to annex an agreement. We're approving it, I think, the second reading tonight. But I want to impress upon people that are here, the citizens, you weren't here for the budget meeting. The budget meeting, you would hear what's going on. And I don't want to be a discouraging word across the prairie, but it's getting serious. And we're trying to keep the taxes, the city taxes, lower and try to keep the services up. And that's becoming a difficult situation, and we're putting the city into a negative position, or beginning to trend negative, by taking it from our savings. Already our water and sewer is not at the percentage ratio that is recommended for them to have money in reserve. Because we take it from the water and sewer to support. Not only that, we take it from our reserves as well. So it's a difficult position. I don't live as close to it as you do. I'm on Lakeview. I don't live as close to it as some of you here that are probably concerned about it. But I've been in jobs in a position where, one, we don't want to be in a position where we say no to development automatically, if you know what I mean. I've seen it happen, and it's been detrimental to a city that I was involved with, and on a much larger scale than this, but it killed it. It killed the city, set it back years because of wheeling and dealing going on. And I'm just concerned that we get this as a negative instead of a positive. I think we're making a mistake here. We're sending the wrong message. Also, I think that if we can work, and I don't know, I haven't been part of it, but you've been working with it, if we can work some way of a win-win out of this thing as far as where they place it and clear as to what the impact will be. You know, we got the parkway there, it's built, and then that back part of the parkway going out, 17 and out is going to be open, probably, well, before that, I would assume.
Yeah.
Who knows, but yeah, before that gets built. So,
It will be.
I, for one, I mean, I'm not preaching a message here that I think many of the people we don't see here normally that are here for this issue agree with me, but I'm telling you, the city needs to find revenue, and we need economic development, and we need to show developers that we will work with them. I'm not saying unbridled development, I'm saying smart development as best we can. So, good luck to you.
Good comments. Back to Mr. Stewart, please.
He asked the question I was gonna ask.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion up here on the dais?
Well, I just want to say, my property butts up against commercial. There's 3 semis a day come to my road. I'd rather have 3 semis than all the school traffic that I have. I'm telling you, in front of my house looks like a drag strip when the school lets out. So you would be better off with something like this than you would a school or a subdivision beside you, I can tell you, because it's bad.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, I would like to also make a comment that I do think that this is the type of development that we're wanting to come to Sebring, the distribution type. It is on the list of the 6 different things we're looking to get here. It's a very reputable company. They've been around a long time. They provided a lot of jobs for local people. Some of those trucks are going to be here whether they originate here or not, because they're going to deliver here. So it's not like we're going to have 0 trucks here. The Sebring Parkway was built for things like this. The infrastructure was built for stuff like this. Anybody that locates a house around here is going to know that that facility is there before they build their house, because right now it's all vacant. So it's kind of like the airport, you know. They go out and they build an airport out in the middle of nowhere. People locate around it, and then they start complaining because the airplanes are noisy. Well, you knew the airport was there before you got there. The people that build around here are going to know this is there before they get there. If they want to build there, that's fine. But for the most part, I don't think there's going to be any traffic. I don't think people will notice this traffic at all. And right now, Sebring Parkway is underutilized. And you can tell that a little bit by the fact that the circle is closed. The new circle, the 90-degree turn, is closed, and there's not that much traffic on Lakeview coming from Sebring Parkway. There is more, but Sebring Parkway
You live on the
is-
wrong end of Lakeview.
Living on the same Lakeview Island, Charlie.
Okay.
We
Not
need
too
more
far
help from
away
the
from
county on
y'all,
that than
but-
we do this right now.
We're working on it.
But nonetheless, I think this is why we have built the parkway and the infrastructure around there, and I think it's a good, clean business. So, good luck with it.
Thank you.
And they do give back into the community.
They do.
Anybody that does anything, stuff to help, even charitable organizations, they help
All the time.
all the
They're
time.
great business partners.
Yes, they are.
Folks, where I think we're at a point in our discussion, if you will, is to open this up to the public. So, if there's anyone who'd like to speak on this matter, please come forward, tell us who you are and what you represent. Jeff, maybe you can tilt that back where, yeah.
He
so
might throw
that,
one thing up
so
for me.
so the folks at home can throw.
Do I address you as chief, president, council member?
It's Chief President. to
Chief
you,
president?
sir.
Okay. Scott, if you wouldn't mind taking one of those and passing them down for me. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chief President, council members, thank you very much. My name is Jeff Carlson. For those of you that don't know me, I'll try and be brief. I spent 9 years sitting where you're sitting through the very good booming economy and through the crash of the economy. Then I went and spent a couple of years at the County Commission. During most of that period of time, I sat as the president of the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, which is in charge of planning for a large region in the state of Florida. So I know a little bit about planning. what I've just passed out to you is several maps. I'm going to focus on a couple of them, and I want you to think for a minute, if you were able to get Sebring 100 years ago and design it the way you thought it ought to be designed, commercial where you wanted it, residential where you wanted it, the densities the way you wanted them, and the traffic the way that you wanted it. We were in a unique situation in 05 and 06 and 07 where the Hometown Democracy Act was coming forward, and we were flooded with developers. We had exactly that situation with almost 2,000 acres of land. If you switch to page 2, which is a blow-up of this area, and this is part of the county's comp plan, by the way, so I'm not really sure how this is compatible with the comp plan, but that's for a different debate. But right now, what I want you to think about is that we meaning the county, the city, both planning and zoning boards, the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, hours and days in joint meetings. Just think about trying to publish that public notice. What we came up with was the developers, all the landowners through here, which included the land from Lakeview Drive all the way to Lake Sebring, all the way out to Basket Lake, Highlands Road, and past Powerline Road along Highway 17. All of those landowners, Crutchfields, Davis, all were in the room working with us on what's called the North Sebring Sector Plan. The North Sebring Sector Plan gave all of us the opportunity to give input into how we designed that part of town as the future growth corridor of Sebring. This is the plan that came out. If you look at this, and I'm not sure if we have, can you get it up there, Scott, do you think? If you start on the left side of this page, you'll see the little hash marks that go right in the middle of this piece of property. Those blue hash marks, those are greenway corridors that were designed to connect the commercial areas, which at this time the vision was commercial retail. And this isn't about traffic, because everyone realizes that the traffic of commercial retail is going to be much higher than a distribution center, although the future expansion plans, we don't know what that will be.
Can you point that on the map, Jeff?
If you look at this section here, this is the property we're talking about.
Correct.
That the planning and zoning board at the county turned down. What we designed here were these corridors that are all greenway to connect all this residential from Highway 17 to Sebring Parkway, almost all the way up to the city of Avon Park. This blue area was proposed and set aside as school land, currently marked as public. These are all residential areas and commercial areas along the Sebring Parkway. This is the section that's closed right now. And the intent of that plan was to try and make this community walkable, which is something that everyone's trying to do these days, make compatible uses, and I think that's the biggest issue that we're coming up with now, is the compatibility. I'm not honestly sure how that particular parcel here ended up as a B3 in the county, because the city zoning along there is C1, which is light commercial retail. The county's B3 is industrial, so for you to annex this property, you're gonna have to take residentially zoned lands, rezone this land I1, which is industrial, and put that there. So the compatibility of those uses and how this will fit in with the overall master plan, it's almost unheard of for a community to have the opportunity that we had at that time period to put a plan as comprehensive as this together with all of those stakeholders involved. Economic development, everyone was involved. So I'd ask that everyone consider this as you think about, and I know you're not making a decision tonight, but just as you do your own research in the background, again, not about traffic, about compatible uses with the greenway corridors, the schools, and the light commercial that's planned there. The next thing from an economic development standpoint, Mr. Shoup knows this, he's been on economic development board for about 100 years. Economic development and IDA has come to us several times and spent millions of dollars to put together specific areas for this type of industrial use. Those areas include the Sebring Airport, which has a vast amount of land with resources and access to 2 major corridors. By the way, what the developer said about the distribution network was Highlands, Hardy, and Okeechobee counties. So what better place to have it than along 98 and 66, where you have direct access, which is where they're at now, at the airport or someplace like that. The other large industrial park that we approved many years ago was the one behind Woody's RV Park, where there's a plant pot manufacturing facility. There's rail, there's highway corridor access right next door to it. Water, sewer, gas, everything right there ready to go. And what the EDC wanted us to do was try and design turnkey operations where people could come in and say, hey, build to suit here. This is where you need to go. These are the projects. This has the infrastructure and the facilities that you need. So I just ask that you think about that with compatible uses and the future of the town, a few thousand tax dollars versus a large swath of almost 2,000 acres of potential developable land that could be impacted by this 22 acres. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue?
I'd like to make one point of reference on this map.
Sure, absolutely.
It's somewhat
Come on
outdated.
up.
If you look at the zoning map we had here, if you also look at this property, that is also B3 as well. So this map is somewhat old, it has not been updated.
And-
That B3 stretches here, so let's take this and move it over.
And B3 for the county is not industrial. We have an industrial zoning, a light industrial, and a heavy industrial, so that's not consistent. Yes, there have been sites that have been tried to be developed. This company did look out at the airport. There are certain scenarios where the airport only requires a long-term lease scenario. A business needs to look at the best business decision for them. And they have looked at those scenarios. They have looked at the airport. They have looked at other sites. The Warehouse America site that you mentioned is an excellent site, and it is one of our more turnkey sites. It's about 40 acres. There is a rail spur that goes through it. It is behind Woody's. Would we run into a similar situation in which people would be concerned about putting a distribution facility next to an RV park? Possibly. Also, we have very limited sites with existing infrastructure on rail. This company does not need rail. So when we're thinking about the competitiveness of the future as well, we do have to be selective on where we put certain businesses. If they don't need rail, why take up a site that has a rail spur to it that could be used for someone else that needed that in the future? So there are a ton of things that go into this. I want you to know that when we do these projects and we do look for sites and we're working with these businesses, we do it in a conscious way that makes the most sense for the business right now, for the community, and then the businesses coming forward.
Just point of clarification, the North Sebring Area Sector Plan is an overlay which sits over top of, like an overarch. If you're looking at a map and you clicked overlays, this one would sit over top of it as something that the county and the city agreed to joint cooperation to try and develop this in the future. I understand that that's B3 is not industrial, but based on the city's zoning, B3 would be I1 for the city, not a commercial use. So that's where the incompatibility would come in. You would have residential zoning right next to industrial zoning.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue?
Good evening. Good evening. My name's Tom Griffin, and I'm here tonight because I'm representing, working with a large group of residents that are opposed to the zoning change from the R3 to the commercial zoning in the area. And, you know, everybody's talked a little bit about the pluses and minuses of that change, but our concern is the future of the area once you let the genie out of the bottle. Once you take the, you know, R3 out and put commercial right next to R1, I heard a comment that, well, if you build a house there, you know it's there. Well, the problem with that is you're not going to build the house there, okay? And so when nobody's building the house there, then you don't get the growth. So we want growth. We want Bernie Little to build a facility in Highlands County that they can move their operations to and run 50 trucks a day out of if they want, and hire 200 people. But let's put that in the right spot. You know, whether it's Bernie Little or Cisco or, you know, Lowe's or whoever. Our group has over 150 signatures for a position of opposition. We made our point to the planning and zoning, and I feel like that's the reason that they turned it down. We had a good presentation. We had a good argument. We came prepared, and they could see that what we were talking about made sense. I did ask Mr. Little at that meeting about future growth, because I asked him, if you're only going to have 3 semis bringing things in and 8 or 10 trucks going out a day. Why are you building a 70,000 square foot facility? That's a lot of space for 8 delivery trucks. And he did admit, which I appreciated, that they want to grow that facility, that they want to fill that up, and they want to move as much beer out of there as they can. So, you know, what we're saying is, let's not make Scenic Road into this scenic industrial road. Let's not make Scenic Road or the Parkway. We know there's going to be commercial along the Parkway. But these residents, the group that I'm involved with, they just think it's a bad idea and it's a bad location, and that's why they voiced their opposition. A couple final comments. I was at that meeting and I've heard a couple comments about one of the reasons that the county wanted to come to present to you today was because there were comments there made by people from the audience about the city's position on a project like this. I was at that meeting and that's not accurate. There were comments made, but those comments were made from the Planning and Zoning Board member, not from opposition people in the audience. So I just think that needed a clarification. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, but we're gonna be at the county commission meeting, and it just feels like an unusual situation where planning and zoning turned something down, and then now we're making an end around to the city commission to get them on board, so that when we present it again to the county commission, we can say, hey, the city commission's in favor of this, even though the planning and zoning turned it down. And it was pretty, it was not a close vote. So there's a process that we follow with these things. It gives the people opportunity to voice opposition, and that's the way the system works. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Is there anyone else who would like to come up and share their thoughts on this topic with us? Mr. Cool, happy birthday, sir. Welcome to the club.
Thank you, sir. My name is Carl Cool. I live on 3570 Lakeview Drive. I'm here to speak about this request and this presentation that was made to you. What was presented to you is talking about asking the county commissioners to consider changing the zoning. But they got to do more than that. They have to change the county's adopted comprehensive plan. They didn't show that on the maps, but they know that. What they're asking you to do is to understand that the request by the purchaser of the land is to change the zoning. Well, it goes beyond that. And as Jeff pointed out, this whole area there's a plan. And it's a good plan. And it talks about what good planning is. And what you're hearing today really is not good planning. Good planning doesn't propose to put industrial next to residential. And that's not what they said, but that's really the net bottom line result that's being asked of the county, and hopefully they're asking for the city to endorse that. What happens is what they want to build has to go in B3, and they're asking the county to change a residential zoning to B3. And that's not too bad, because B3 is often next to B3 is next to high density residential. But the comprehensive plan, if you go beyond that to the northern end, they're asking it to go from B3 that butts up to the county's adopted comprehensive plan of residential. So now we got B3, but it's worse than that, because the development as it takes place will need city water and sewer. That's why they're talking. They told you that. That's one of the reasons they want to be here. They need city, water, and sewer. And the city has the position and ability to provide water and sewer to the site. And if you provide water and sewer, you're going to require them to sign an agreement for annexation. That's standard practice. That's not a surprise. That's city standard, been that way for years. If you annex that property, your zoning that you have, your current zoning that you have right now, will require a zoning change to I-1. We're not talking about B3 next to residential. Now we're talking about I-1 next to residential. You hadn't heard that till tonight. No one said that till tonight. But if you annex that property, your current zoning rules and regulations, to have a distribution center on your on property inside the city, it has to be in I-1 zone. So what's being asked is not going to B3, but if it's to be annexed into the city, the only way you can let them operate the distribution center is in a zoning of I-1. Now, there's no I-1 on any of this. We're talking about changing the entire plan for one business and changing the whole concept of what was supposed to go out there. Now, we have a good plan. Y'all have a good plan. City adopted a good comprehensive plan. The county had a good comprehensive, and it's there. But the change that's being requested of the county commissioners is not in accordance with the plan. It's in violation with the plan, and it's in the, and then when you follow through what's going to happen, if you annex that property, you're going to have to decide, can I live with I-1 zoning on Scenic Highway? Because that's what they need to operate a distribution center there if it's annexed by the city. I submit to you, no one in this room would tell you that's good planning. It simply is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Is there anyone else that would like to come up and address council? Sure. One more bite at the apple.
No, just providing some facts here.
It's okay.
The I guess the first statement would be, from the county's perspective, we're not improving industrial here. You know, now Scott, if you have a plan development process, if you annex, you could do a PD that limits it to the use. If you were to annex that property, maybe an option for you. Don't know, throwing it out there. But the county's not approving industrial. You want to go see industrial? Go see what's under construction in north part of the county. Nucor, that's industrial. This is not industrial. So I take a little exception to that because we would not permit industrial on that property. The current R3 zoning, and also remember there's existing B3 there today. That will be under ownership of this individual if all this goes through. So you already have B3 there. It's an extension of it. So if you were to annex it, you're going to have to, some of that, if that's the case, it'd have to be industrial. That's going to happen anyways with the existing B3. But under the R3 zoning district, I just want to let you all know what's currently permitted under the R3 zone. And he is correct about the land use change. This requires a land use change as well, which is they're going simultaneously. It has to go to go to our land use C commercial district for the B3 to fit. But under the current R3, obviously it's single family, multifamily, and apartments up to 233 units. The R3 actually allows a motel and hotel, and if you have over 50 rental units, it allows restaurants, nightclubs, dining rooms, or bars. You allow private clubs and lodges, such as the Elks, American Lodge, Eagles, etc. Hospitals, nursing homes and assisted living facilities, boarding home for sheltered care, medical and dental office and clinic, colleges, public and private schools, and daycare centers. So that R3 could have those uses on there as well. So I wanted to make sure everyone knew that, because I think the perception is this is only residential. It allows more than residential right now as well. And if anybody wants that, we can hand it around.
But we're only talking about that one section. I want to make sure I understand that. Is that correct?
This is the request that they have.
That's the request they have, but the
But they would
part,
have ownership of all this, the existing B3 plus that.
so the only part that right now is commercial is the pink part right down below that, correct?
This, but
Yeah.
also this property here is
Right.
also B3 currently.
Okay.
Yep.
And so everybody knows
That's an
across,
overlay map.
sorry, and so everybody knows across the street from that, on Scenic, that is the city. So one side of Scenic is the county and one side is the city, which makes this a little bit difficult. Is there anybody else that'd like to address council tonight? I'd like to speak some more. Mr. Griffin again.
Sorry.
Second by,
Left one thing out.
that's all right.
I did have, thank you. I did have a conversation with Mike Willingham with the Sebring Airport Authority, and he has met with Joe Little, and he has made 2 presentations to them about property that they can purchase at the Sebring Regional Airport. Is available for purchase that would fit their needs, not just leased properties. He's made 2 presentations, provided those to Bernie Little distributors, so thought you guys should know that.
Thank you.
And I'll agree with that. When we started looking,
Wait till you get up here so it'll be recorded. Thank you.
I said I'll agree with that. When we first started working with Bernie Little back in January and looking at sites, the same day we went and looked at the Scenic Highway location, we went out and looked at the airport. So just because it's out there and because it makes sense doesn't mean it makes the most business sense for the company. It was an option. Mike has talked to them since. They're still interested in trying to move forward with this at this time. It makes the most business sense for them.
All business decisions. Anybody else like to come up and talk?
We have a councilman that wants to.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
I just want to know, does this company have a plan B in case this doesn't work out for them? I love plans.
I don't know exactly their plan Bs. Like, we like to think positively and hope that this will move forward. I cannot guarantee that if this does not work, that they will not look at areas outside of the community. So I want to stress, we have at least 35 people that live in this community that work at this company that have families. And we want to retain those jobs, and we want to make sure that they have those opportunities. And yeah, they might expand, and that's a great thing. And so they have a facility in Lakeland. They could grow that. They could look at a DeSoto or a Hardy County. They could do multiple things. They are not asking for any incentives. A lot of businesses do. Hardy County has about $10 million they can give businesses every year from the Mosaic money that they can give people to come and relocate. So they have options. So right now, if this rezoning doesn't work, why would they want to buy an entire parcel in which they can't do anything with the back portion that can't be rezoned? So that one might be out of the pot. So I can't speak for them, but I can tell you that it puts a bad taste in an existing business's mouth that it's been here for a number of years, that employs people, that is philanthropic. I don't know how much more welcome they would feel if they were turned away from continuing to grow in this community.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to come up and talk? Okay, as far as this agenda item is concerned, there is no requested motion. I'm not sure exactly what, if anything, we need to do other than to move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you for that.
No, thank you very much for being here. And the next agenda item is business from the audience. Do we have any?
No, sir.
Kathy?
No, sir.
No. City attorney business, ordinance number 1445 requiring annexation agreement for water and sewer service. This will be the second and final reading.
Yes, sir, that ordinance is entitled, or proposed ordinance is entitled, an ordinance creating section 23-1 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring requiring annexation or a recorded irrevocable annexation request as a condition precedent to providing potable water or wastewater collection and treatment service, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date. This is the ordinance that Mr. Ivy was referencing earlier in the meeting.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1445 on second reading as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Gentlemen? Any comments from the audience? Any input?
That's left.
Kathy, call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Stedman.
They all
Yes.
left.
Number 13A is a bid for general mowing of city facilities. This will be city administrator. Please, Mr. Natlik.
Good evening, Council. Purchasing Department solicited for bids for our general mowing contract. That's something we have on an annual basis. Jack's Lawn Care has had that annual bid for some time now. They received 3 bids, one from Sonny's Lawn Care, one from Jack's Lawn Care, and from Fraser Lawn Care. Staff has made inquiries in reference to each of these bids and submits that the second lowest bidder, which is Jack's Lawn Care, is the most responsible bid. And both Ken and Lisa are in the audience if you've got any questions in reference to that.
There's nothing that says that we have to accept the low bid at all.
That's correct.
Correct. I think there was something there about responsible bidder, maybe the lowest did not meet all the criteria. So, I don't know, Scott, if
Can we
that's.
call Mr. Fields up to maybe clarify that for us?
You can thank me later.
I wasn't the one that started this, Mr. Jones. You know, you've said more tonight than you have in the past 6 months.
I'm getting on a roll here.
You are on a roll.
He's earning
Oh,
his
somebody
dollar.
wound him up.
He's earning his salary.
Ken, go ahead.
What was the question?
He wasn't paying attention.
When,
I was,
Here,
I was.
yeah, okay. You were, in the bid, I had heard somewhere where maybe that was not, the lowest bid was not responsive in everything that you had asked for.
I just think that we pulled some records and we felt they were not responsible based on those records.
That's all I wanted to hear. Public.
Have you checked Jack out good?
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Okay, then I guess we could.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid from Jack's Lawn and Landscaping, Inc. as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, approve staff recommendations for contract extension, and instruct the city to prepare a new contract with Jack's Lawn and Landscaping, Inc.
I'll second that since I extended this thing.
Since you started that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and we do have a second. Kathy, call the roll.
Cardile.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Proposal to amend city code of ordinance for dock and boathouse sizes to follow the Florida Department of Environmental Protection size limit regulations. Once again, I introduce to you our city administrator, Mr. Scott Nagle.
Attached to your agenda item summary is a request from our building official, requesting that we follow FDEP regulations when it comes to sizes of boat docks and boat houses. He and I discussed this pretty extensively. Provided for you is a list of that was provided by Central Florida Regional Planning Council of other jurisdictions. There's also a one-page summary of the FDEP permitting process for boat docks and boat houses. And then attached is our current city code. We just feel that why regulate when it's already regulated at FDEP's level. We do have a couple instances where people have the ability to put up boat docks and houses, and they look at their next door neighbors and say, how come I can't build one that size? So over time, the city's downsized the size of their boat houses and boat docks. So we've got it on the agenda for some guidance. If you wish, we can instruct the city attorney to draft or repeal what we have, and then there are some things we'd want to leave in our current ordinance. Has to do with reflectors and stuff like that, addressing. Greg is much more familiar with this whole permitting process. So if you've got any questions about permitting and what's allowable at the state level, please direct those questions to Greg.
Why don't we do this, to boil all the fat out of it, tell us what the difference is between what we have now and what we would be going to if we follow the FDEP size regulations. Really.
And also
easy
why?
peasy.
Why?
And why, sure.
Sure. Greg Griffin, Provisional Building Official. Essentially, what we have now is a series of regulations that are limiting to a degree, and part of the problem that we've run into has been the historical application of the dimensions that we would allow. This came about because a gentleman named Mr. Paul Tokars, who lives between Alan J. Wildstein and Troy Malloy, was wanting to build his dock. He looks at Mr. Wildstein's dock, looks at Mr. Malloy's dock. Obviously, Mr. Malloy's dock's more contemporary, more modern, and says, why can't I build that? I was approached with it. I pulled the ordinance, looked at the ordinance, read it verbatim, and if I apply the ordinance as it's written, most of the docks that were built to accommodate 2 boats on the lake are not built specifically to how we have how the code's written now. So what we're asking to do is divert back or revert to DEP standard, which is 1,000 square feet or less qualifies for an exemption. 2 boat slips, 2,000 square feet is a general permit. And beyond that, you have to do a notice permit, in which that third step, the larger dock, the agency, DEP, notices the surrounding property owners and goes through basically a similar public appeal process. So we would be responsible then largely for the structural component, and as Scott said, any variables that we like to control.
So, were they allowed to do that at one point with us? Did we follow the state standards, 10 years ago, and we changed them?
I don't know what the history was. There was an amendment done for Mr. Haig's property out on Lake Charlotte to allow him to build larger.
Right.
But as far as I'm aware, we haven't followed per se the DEP specific regulation.
So how do these guys get these big docks?
It's a good question. Like I say, it's it's been the interpretation of our code, which is debatable.
I want to say that, and
I think I get it.
when we're talking about boathouses, I think that's what we're really talking about. If I recall correctly, the city modified its code when Futch Construction constructed a dock, right?
2006.
2006. Because of the size of the boathouse. I don't think it had to do with the size of the dock itself, but the boathouse itself. So the city
Fairmont used to hit Lakeview, that where you built the 3 houses near your house.
4 houses, yeah.
Yeah.
4 house subdivision, it's an HOA actually.
So they have that little
Right.
community.
That's correct.
And I
That's
can't
what
tell
I-
you
that
whether
was
we were
the
following the FDEP guidelines up to that point, or whether we had just a larger
Yeah.
square footage that was allowed up to that point. But obviously there was concern of council and or some residents in reference to the size of that boathouse. Now, whether or not, I couldn't tell you, because I don't know how it got permitted and whether or not it went through DEP and property owners were noticed or not.
Right.
If we had an ordinance in place, would our ordinance trump essentially? I mean, it wouldn't trump
No, and
DEP,
there
but
was
would it trump their regulation process?
No,
I guess.
The
Right.
state statutes and regulations apply regardless of what the city says.
Right.
And there was a time when DEP was doing size inspections on docks and whaling on dock builders and owners who built outside, built theirs too big, they got their permit and they ended up building something far larger, then they got in trouble for having done so. So that was a crackdown 10, 12 years ago. We had a rash of dock builders come in the office, I recall. So this is, what we have is more restrictive than what the state has.
How much more restrictive is ours versus the state? So we restrict them to what now?
Well, it to a degree depends on interpretation, and here's an example. If you're going to count the total square footage being the dock, that's one way to approach it. The other would be to count the square footage being the roof line. So we're 1,000, 2,000 square foot cumulative. It's all in how you're going to interpret what we have, and it's not real clear.
Are we close to what the state is, or are we far away
We're
from it?
No,
900 square feet on your base one.
Right,
You don't
we're
have a
relatively
really wide
close.
lot.
Okay, so it's not gonna make a huge difference.
No. You won't see a Taj Mahal, a 5,000 square foot dock built out there on any of the lakes in the city limits, unless they go before the state and everybody's noticed around them and has ample opportunity to object.
Well, I for one, if it's close, appreciate a few less regulations. And going with the state, as long as it's close to what we have, I think we'd be fine with
Does it make it less confusing to?
Absolutely.
It does.
And that's largely why we're trying to clarify. It makes it less confusing, also allows, for folks who have larger parcels, have larger houses, want a little larger boat dock, and their neighbors aren't opposed to it, it gives them the opportunity to do that.
And if they are opposed to it?
That's between the agency and the individuals.
I see.
So they they get to work it out.
But we're still responsible to make sure that it's inspected and
Correct.
permitted and all of the building codes are being followed.
We've got several components that we're going to retain, obviously the structural component.
Right.
Also, there's a section of waterfront from the gate station to Scenic Highway that has a prohibition for gazebos on the lake side where all the houses are on the opposite side. That we would maintain. There's another, the reflectors, as Scott said, lighting requirements. Those are things that are in our code that we would maintain. But
Those
what it
aren't in
does
the
is
state code?
some are, some are not, and they're somewhat ambiguous. What it does is it gives us a definitive start for what we're going to do for square footage. Basically, outside of that, we're maintaining our regulations.
Okay, quick question for you. You brought up the gazebo thing. There's a bunch of gazebos along there. Are those grandfathered in?
They're grandfathered.
Okay.
We're gonna have you remove curse, so.
Permitted though.
Illegally, but it's okay.
And I
before my
had
time.
DEP come out.
That's a tiki hut,
So
that's not a
for-
gazebo.
I think
Yeah.
the guy
It's on
that
land.
is next to Alan, I think may have a bigger problem because when he
Yeah.
built his, it was too large for that lot, that he used some footage from that property next door, if I believe, to be able to build, because he owned that property, so.
So for clarification, what will happen is they'll go to FDEP. They get some type of certificate, is that correct?
They will get, if they go through the exemption, they'll get an exemption, which is a self-certification. So they're certifying that their dock's less than 1,000 square feet and meets all the requirements for that. If it's anything beyond that, they will actually get a permit issued to them, and they will, upon applying to us for a building permit, have to provide that.
Are there, I'm sorry.
The latter is the more common that you would expect to see, right? Not less than 1,000. You'd see that up to 2,000.
Typically, it's the 1,000 to 2,000 square feet is what we're going to see the most of, unless it's an extenuating circumstance. And the extenuating circumstance would be where the lake is less than 2 feet below mean low water. So if somebody had to build a boardwalk 400 feet long to get to deep enough water, it would allow for that.
So I also want to follow up and be clear, because Greg and I have had this discussion. They get a permit to build a certain size dock. Okay, so let's say it's 1,500 square feet. In your process, you ensure they follow their permit, because it's not like there's somebody from the state coming
Correct.
around here
Right,
and inspecting it.
sure. So that's our responsibility.
So they have, it will be our responsibility implied to the building official that you make sure it gets constructed as it was permitted by the state.
On behalf of the consumer, do they have to pay 2 fees when they apply to FDEP and to us?
Sure, there's a fee for FDEP, and I'll give you what the fees are. For the exemption, it's $100. For the general permit, that's the 1,000 to 2,000 square
That's
foot.
for the DEP.
It's $250, and then for the individual permit, because of the notifications, it's $420.
And what is it now? So that's more out of pocket then?
That's what, well,
They have that today.
they still have to do it.
Okay, I got that. Oh, I see.
So we're not changing anything on the DEP end. They
So
still
if you're
have-
doing something less than 1,000 square feet today, they still have to self-certify it
Correct.
at the state
Right.
and show up at our.
So I'm curious who checks the elevation of these things?
That's a good question, because most of the design folks aren't quite aware of wave action, what it's done to the docks. What we've been looking at recently is making sure that people are being compliant because of what happened when Irma came through and the docks were built at the water level. And the scary thing is ever since the hurricane, there have been docks built back at that same water level, which is just going to lead to another mess when the next storm comes through.
How do you gauge that? I mean, there has to be a
Well,
survey of some type of.
we know, so there's a staff gauge located at the intersection of Scenic Highway and Lakeview. And then it's got the base elevation. Most of the plans will call for it to be either 2 or 2.5 feet above mean high water. That's going to mitigate most wave action. So long as
that's
it's.
what they're supposed to follow.
That's what they're supposed to follow.
And most of them don't.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
So.
What about the docks that hadn't been rebuilt since the hurricane? I thought we sent a letter or something out saying they had a certain amount of time, and if you take a boat and ride around, there's still quite a few that's not been.
Right. Mr. Toller's been handling that, and I'll defer to Scott to see where we're at. I think they've got most of them in compliance, or they have current letters, and I think they're looking at going back to the board with them.
And some folks have indicated that they are constructing docks to leave. But if they don't here in the near future, they'll be taken back to the code enforcement board.
What is the future?
I have a question in regards to, I guess, this is just for my education, a dock versus the boathouse. The dock is the walkway to the boathouse?
Correct. You don't have to have a boathouse. So a boathouse is any structure, and it's really just nomenclature, any structure with a roof. It doesn't even necessarily have to have a boat, but that's typically what we refer to. And so you guys understand, a dock with just the boardwalk does not require engineering, but if it has a roof, if it does have structure to it, it does require engineering.
Okay, so now the dock is limited to 1,000 to 2,000, and then the boathouse is another 1,000 to 2,000?
So the way it's currently written, the DEP numbers are cumulative. So it's 1,000 square foot total, 2,000 square foot total, in excess of 2,000 square foot total, with the exception of that 2 foot mean low water, the water depth.
Right.
Our code is 900 feet. I think it's 900 and 1,000. So
DEP code's a little simpler to apply because it's whatever covers the water. Whether it's a dock that's flat, whether there's a section of roof over it, it's any space, square footage that covers water.
right,
I think
it's a total square foot.
Building a lake is low, you can go way out.
Or live on the east side.
That might not happen again.
You get the opportunity. Go 600 yards.
Let's not talk about that.
Any other questions, Mr. Brown? Any other discussion?
Looking for a motion?
I think we could do that. Is there any okay, we'll take your motion first.
Okay, I'll move that we accept the proposal to amend the city code of ordinance for dock and boathouse sizes to follow FDEP size limit regulations.
You have to tell them, have the city attorney prepare.
Oh, yeah. The city attorney prepare the ordinance to reflect that
He heard you.
amendment. Okay.
I'll
Do I hear a
second that.
Okay. We have a motion. Mr. Carlisle
wasn't in
made
there.
the second. Is there any comments from the audience? Anybody want to talk about this anymore? Kathy, call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes. Last but not least, city clerk's business and announcements. We have to pay the bills.
Council needs to approve the payment of bills, please.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Anybody want to talk about the bills? Call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes, thank you all for being here this evening.
Talk about the racetrack.